Good evening, everybody. How are we all doing? I am Chris, and I'm back with another James Bond review. Tonight, I'm going to be talking about The World Is Not Enough, which is the 1999 spy film directed by Michael Apted. Once again, continuing with the Pierce Brosnan era, and we will be concluding it next week. It feels very short-lived. It's only been a month. He only did 4 films, so I may as well do all the socials and everything now. Next week is one to absolutely not miss. It's Die Another Day. Die Another Day review is going to be next week. That's going to be Tuesday, the 30th of August at 11:30 p.m. British Standard Time. I don't. It's Die Another Day. Like, what else? What else do you need me to say? So definitely tune in for that one. I think that's going to be really fun, and that might require a little bit of this as well for that review. So that should be a fun one. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. Do consider subscribing to the channel for more movie reviews, discussions, and live streams. Guys, September's going to be packed. The front half of September is going to be so loaded with content on the channel. It's absolutely ridiculous. We've got The Rings of Power. By the way, there's been a new trailer for that release today. So if you guys would like to, I've done trailer reactions to the other two. I feel like a broken record now with what I'm saying on those, but I've heard there's some really infamous content in the trailer that came out today. So if you guys would like to see another live stream trailer reaction to that, I might be free tomorrow evening. So if you'd like to see one, do let me know. And there's going to be something else as well, which I think I can announce tomorrow in the TV realm of things. So keep it locked here. Do subscribe to the channel because September's really, really going to pick up. Not to mention that as well, but if you are sticking around for the Bond content, as I mentioned next week is going to be Pierce Brosnan's last week, and then after that we're getting into the Daniel Craig era, so starting a brand new era of Bonds. That's going to be really fun to discuss. So on top of my YouTube channel, subscribing, do follow me on Twitter as well, because there I post all the times that I'm going to go live, videos you can expect to see, and some of the little fun things across the week as well that take my fancy. Go there, give me a follow. You can find me at Hobbit Fan Editor. And because we are talking The World Is Not Enough tonight, let me know what you think of The World Is Not Enough. Do you consider it to be one of the best Pierce Brosnan films? Certainly in terms of like his Bond films. Do you think it's one of the best Bond films in general? Anything regarding this movie, please do let me know. Of course, this is a live stream tonight, so the chat is open. Feel free to discuss this movie and James Bond in general. And we should have a really, really good conversation on our hands. Also, if you are new to it, let me know what your favorite James Bond film is and who your favorite actor to play James Bond is. Because we are going to be talking about Brosnan's performance tonight, because it might be his best Bond performance, actually, out of all the films. And I forgot how great he was in this film, but we're going to get into that in a second. We have got Carl, as usual, my friend. How you doing? Hopefully everything's going all well for you. Spoke with the staff at my cinema tonight, and they did confirm they are showing the Daniel Craig films. Yes, actually, that's a good jumping off point. I did want to discuss that. I have been watching my Odeon app like the goddamn Eye of Sauron, and I'm now blinded by my phone as well. That was it's like the Eye of Sauron was staring back at me. Let me turn that off real quick. So I booked tickets for Casino Royale, right? And it comes up in like your purchases, like all your tickets and your dates and your times and everything. And the poster on the booking for Casino Royale was the 1967 one, the comedy. And there's like a little graphic on your ticket as well, like a little background image. And it was the Peter Sellers one. And I really panicked. I thought, are they just going to like troll the entire James Bond fan base, and everyone's going to show up expecting to see Casino Royale with Daniel Craig, and they're actually going to show the 1960s one? I was pretty confident it would be the Daniel Craig one. Of course it is, because I checked the weeks ahead and I saw Quantum of Solace, I saw Skyfall and everything like that. But I got in the Odeon live chat today and I was like, look, I just want to confirm, because I ain't showing up to the cinema if you're going to be playing that 1967 version, but they've now changed it to the new one. So we will have a lot to say on the Daniel Craig era, especially the latter half of his films, certainly. But I'm glad they're playing them, because if they ended it at Die Another Day, that's just... You can't end it at Die Another Day, can you? Christ almighty. What a way to end off that legacy. So I am glad that we're getting them, just for the completionist in me. And Carl says, always yes for content on Rings of Power. Then look out for my live stream tomorrow. I don't know what times just yet, but I will post them. When I know, you'll know. It's probably going to be a late one. It's probably going to be like 10, maybe 11 o'clock in the PM. I'll let you know. Okay, that's the whole preamble done. Let's dive into this film. So, The World Is Not Enough. This is only my second time watching this film. I watched this film for the first time last year. Last year, in fact, I hadn't watched any of the Pierce Brosnan films. I'd missed out on a whole generation of Bond, which is very strange because I definitely consider, I think I mentioned this last week and maybe even the week before that as well. I consider Brosnan to be my generation's Bond. Although I wasn't a massive, I wasn't a James Bond fan growing up, but I distinctly remember Die Another Day, like so much like, marketing and trailers and posters and just everything surrounding that, TV spots. Brosnan was, the in thing, of course, growing up in the 90s and everything and ticking over into the 2000s. He was the main like head honcho of things. So, but yeah, The World Is Not Enough. I watched it for the first time last year when I did my retrospective last year on it. And I was actually kind of negative on this one. I was kind of really lukewarm. And I don't know what the general consensus of this film is, because it seems like people are really, really split down the middle on this. I've seen some people hail it as Brosnan's best, one of the best Bond films in general. And then some people just saying, oh, it's kind of bad. And, it's one that I actually haven't heard a lot of people talk about. It's one that certainly Tomorrow Never Dies and The World Is Not Enough are just kind of get lost in the minutiae of things, I think, really. Everyone talks about GoldenEye, and for completely different reasons, everyone talks about Die Another Day, but those two in the middle, no one really gives it much attention. JX Editor, asking the questions that need to be asked. Would you say that The World Is Enough? Yeah, it's all we got, isn't it? It's all we got. The world is enough. Is it great? No. But is it enough? Sure. I think it's enough. Anyway. But yeah, so actually out of all of the Bond films, going to the Odeon cinema and watching these rescreeners as a way to just refresh my memory on them as well, because, I watched them all last year between the same time period. I think it was between April and October, but because most of them I was watching for the first time, they did blur into one a little bit by the end of it all. And now that I've watched all 25 and going back through them all again, now I can kind of reorder them and readjust them and just come at them with fresh eyes and, have a knowing of the whole franchise rewatching these films. This one was actually one that I was really looking forward to seeing again on the big screen, because I was very lukewarm on it last time, and there was a lot of things that I'd kind of forgotten about it. Obviously, like the best things in the film I'd carried with me. Electra King, we'll get into her character later on in the review. But I really wanted to be won over by this one tonight, and seeing them on the big screen is a completely different experience. I've only ever seen these films on the small screen, so now seeing them on the big screen, it's, it is a fantastic experience, and I'm really glad that Odeon are doing this, actually. Hopefully, fingers crossed, they do it with some more big franchises as well. And I definitely enjoyed it more tonight. I will say that I definitely enjoyed it more tonight than I did watching it for the first time. However, I think the criticisms that I had from last year still carry over into this year. Of course it does. Like, it's not going to be a massive change of opinion, is it, from my opinions last year? And this is a very frustrating and probably going to be a very difficult Bond film to review, because on the one hand, this film contains some of the best elements of the franchise as a whole, but also some of the very worst. And the film itself, for me, is it just kind of falls on the side of average to me. I think it's very difficult to pin down why I have that opinion, because all the ingredients are in there, what you come to expect from a Bond film. You've got your glamorous women, you've got your gadgets, you've got great action in there. You've got a memorable villain, and you've got a world-ending plot kind of thing, with a submarine, again, with a nuclear bomb of some kind. But this one, I don't know if it doesn't quite feel as by the numbers as some of the Bond films, though, because, this is an original story, which I'll actually give them credit for. It's an original story, but I don't know. There's just something about this one that doesn't make it as entertaining to me as Tomorrow Never Dies was, which was a very paint by the numbers Bond film. That was definitely a lot more of a safe Bond film compared to this one. Hopefully by the end of this discussion, we'll get to the bottom of it, why this one just kind of, it falls a little bit flat for me. It doesn't quite have the impact. But that being said, there's still a lot of really good things about this film. Let's dive into those things. Pierce Brosnan. Holy shit. I mean, Brosnan's great as Bond anyway. He's fantastic as Bond. I've always said that Brosnan's great as Bond. The Bond films he's in are not as great as some of the older ones. Like, they're fine, but they don't like hit the highest heights for me. But his performance in this one is outstanding, and I didn't remember his performance being this good. I think last week when I did my review on Tomorrow Never Dies, I mentioned that I'd have to watch all of his films again. Well, maybe not Die Another Day, because Die Another Day is Die Another Day. But I wanted to watch this one and then assess which was his best film, because I mentioned in GoldenEye, he's great, but it feels like he's still kind of trying to, fill the shoes of the James Bond character and the actors that have come before him. He's still trying to hit his stride and find out what he can bring to the table as Bond. Tomorrow Never Dies, he's much more suited to the role. He's much more comfortable in the role. I think this one's his standout, without a shadow of a doubt. And I think it's because we get glimpses of that darker past of Bond's character, that haunted quality. There was one scene from last week in Tomorrow Never Dies which showcased that. And it's where he's sitting in the hotel room and he's kind of like holed up with a bottle of vodka, and he's just kind of pouring glass after glass, and he's just sitting in the chair waiting for someone to walk in who's about to kill him so he can be ready and shoot them. And he's just necking this vodka after he's just been like massively beat, probably got like a bunch of broken ribs going on as well. Like, he's just really beat up and disheveled. And I love when we get those glimpses into Bond as well, that haunted, like he's trying to shut out so many demons of his past. And I even want to say with this one, they kind of allude to, they don't mention Tracy, but that whole thing that Bond can't get close to another woman. He can't emotionally open up anymore. He's completely shut himself off. And, I have to assume that that's to do with some kind of trace in his life. Maybe he was married, in this continuity of Bond, he was married and he doesn't want to talk about it, and he can't fall that deep again for someone. And I love that they explore that side of the character with this one, because Brosnan's just like a great action Bond. He's got the suave, he's got the one-liners. He's very much a modern incarnation of what we got with Roger Moore. And there were loads of moments in this film, like the skiing sequences and everything like that. Some of the one-liners. It was like looking at a younger version of Roger Moore again as Bond. So I think Brosnan's an absolute tremendous fit as Bond. But I like that in this one, he got to showcase that darker side, because that was a side that I thought wasn't even touched on with the Brosnan era of films. I'd completely forgotten that this film went to those places, certainly with his character. So, yeah, I mean, he's so comfortable in the action scenes. The action scenes are great in this film as well. The opening title sequence, which until No Time to Die was actually the longest, was it like 14 minutes or something like that? I think it was. You have all the stuff at the beginning with the Swiss banker, which was originally going to be just like the main title itself. And then they thought, well, this is actually kind of a little bit anticlimactic as an opener. So that's why they added on the MI6 stuff and the whole speedboat chase through London. And then you get the title drop. And then No Time to Die came out. And what was that? I was like, it felt like 25 minutes or half hour before we even got the title, to the point where when I first watched No Time to Die, I thought they were going to put the Billie Eilish song at the end. I thought they were going to do away with the tradition of the opening title sequence, because it felt like we were waiting that long. But Bond's looking cool when he's driving the speedboat, and he's adjusting his tie and he's slicking back his hair and stuff. He's so comfortable in the role in this. And I mean, there's one-liners in there are plenty. There really is every element of the Bond character you come to expect is within Brosnan's performance in this one. And I know I'm harping on his performance for so long, but it really is genuinely that good. And I'd forgotten how good it was. And there's moments where, as I mentioned, that you could argue that it does harken back to Tracy, for example, or an equivalent of a Tracy in his life, when he shoots and kills Electra King. And then he just kind of has that moment where he like cradles her body a little bit, and he knew that he had to take her out because there was no way of stopping her. Like, she was a woman on a mission, and she was unwavering in that goal of what she wanted to do. And, you know, he was trying to bring her back from the brink. He was trying to bring her onto his side. And I do genuinely believe that he did fall for her, you know, and he did really care for Elektra. And, you know, when she calls him out, when she initially calls his bluff and says that, you know, you betrayed me, you were using me for bait and everything like that, you can tell that it really is like a dent on his character. And he regretted his decision at that point, I think. I don't think he wanted to use her for bait at all. And when she kind of lays it all, you know, she lays it out bare for him really in that moment. And I think that really cuts deep to his character. So that when he does kill her, there's that moment where he's kind of like cradling the body, and it's almost like, you know, this is the life I wish I could have had. You know, I wish she could have come back. And also he's probably mourning all the other women in his life who have passed away, who have come into contact with Bond. So I don't know. It's more character moments like that, and they're really subtle and they're peppered throughout the film, but really, really good stuff. Let's talk about our leading lady in this one. Not Denise Richards. We will get to Denise Richards in time. But I want to start with the positives of this film first, because as I said, Brosnan's performance, phenomenal. And then Sophie Marceau as well as Elektra King. Easily one of the best Bond villains. Easily one of the most complex characters out of the whole Bond franchise. And even maybe just, you know, female villains in general across any films. Really fascinating backstory to this character and her motive, and, you know, credit where credit's due. The story for this is original. It does have some ingredients of the Bond formula, what we come to expect, but, you know, for all intents and purposes, there was an actual, you know, there was a new story, there was some new themes, some new ideas being presented with this one, with Purvis and Wade, which I would argue they kind of recycled The World Is Not Enough script a bunch of times. Certainly when you get to the likes of Skyfall, for example, there's a lot of common elements in there when you compare to this one as well. And the fact that MI6 is always being blown up as well, just like it is in this one. But Sophie Marceau is just absolutely phenomenal, and yeah, just a really complex character, just a character herself that suffers from Stockholm syndrome. But then as the film kind of develops, it's like, well, no, she was actually the brains behind this whole thing. She was kidnapped by Reynard, but she in a way corrupted him. Like, he didn't want to hurt her or do anything to her, but she had her own agenda. She wanted to do right by her mother's side of her family. And she wanted, you know, this oil empire. She wanted her name to be, she's a very, you know, dominating character. I actually forgot how dominating she is in this, when she's got Bond in the chair, the neck breaking device or something. I was getting flashbacks to like Xenia Onatop, for example, from GoldenEye. There's some really, really good female characters across Brosnan's era. And also some really terrible ones when we get to Halle Berry next week, and another character from this film who we get onto shortly. But the best parts of this whole film are all the stuff to do with the relationship between Bond and Elektra. That is the saving grace of this film. There's a few other good elements as well, which I will talk about in due course, but that is the strength of this film. So the first act of this film is great to me because it's all of that. It's all of that, you know, that plot where Elektra's father is killed in that bombing incident. Bond's hired to protect her, and we see their relationship blossom and everything like that. That's the best stuff. Like the whole skiing stuff as well, and those I don't know what you'd call them. They're like not jet skis. What do you call them? Like snow buggy things with parachutes on them. All of that stuff felt so classic Bond to me. It felt like something from On Her Majesty's Secret Service or one of the Roger Moore Bond films. Really, really good stuff. It's kind of the second act where it loses me a little bit. When we're introduced to Reynard's character. And this is what I'm trying to pin this down, why Reynard doesn't really do anything for me as a villain. The concept of the character is fantastic. I love the fact that he's like this dead man walking who's got this, you know, another Dullo agent went out to assassinate him, shot him in the head, but it didn't kill him. And this bullet's slowly moving its way through his head. And when it hits a certain point, he's going to be dead anyway. But as it's as this bullet's coursing through his brain, it's slowly cutting off all the receptors in his brain to feeling and pain and emotion and, you know, like everything like that. Which actually probably explains my my next point. And you get Robert Carlyle to play him as well, and Robert Carlyle's a fucking tremendous actor, really, really great actor. So you've got a really great concept for a character. You've got a fantastic actor playing him. But Reynard's character is just really boring to me when he comes across on screen. And I think it's such a shame. And I think what would have made the character, because ultimately Reynard's kind of like, he's bigged up to be the main villain, but by the end of the film, he's kind of the henchman, isn't he? I think last year, actually, when we reviewed it, we made the comparison of Talia al Ghul and Bane in the Dark Knight Rises, how Bane's, you know, this hulking brute of a character who's bigged up to be the main character, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh no, there's this female villain who's behind it all, and then Bane kind of becomes a henchman at the end of the film. And it's kind of similar with this one, actually, in that regard. And I was trying to think why the character doesn't really do anything for me, and I think it's honestly down to the way they handle the character, and it's not so much the performance, because I don't blame Robert Carlyle for this at all. I think it's just the way that the character was handled, and I think they could have gone about it in a different way, maybe, which would have made the character more unique, memorable, and a character that initially came to mind that I could compare it to. He has a very similar ailment, actually, who can't feel anything, who just can't feel pain, can't feel hot, cold, anything. If any of you have played any video games, got a PlayStation, the new God of War game, well, I say the new God of War game, God of War 4, the one that came out in, like, what was it, like 2017, 2018? I've lost track of time. The villain of that game is Baldur, and Baldur is this god who just can't feel anything. He can't feel anything, and the guy is completely unhinged, and he's easily one of the best performances in the whole game. The way he acts, the way he conducts himself, he's got this complete, almost suicidal, just ridiculous craziness to him. Like, he's larger than life. The way he talks, the way he acts, he's got this complete, like, self-destructive streak to him, because he knows that he can't die, he knows that he can't be hurt, and he knows that he can't feel any injury that he's got. So he's like the Kurgan in the Highlander. Like, he just doesn't care. You know, it's better to burn out than to fade away kind of personality. And I feel like that's what Reynard could have been. I think if we'd have had a character who's just a little bit zany, a little bit unhinged, a little bit just crazy and unpredictable, I think would have made for a much more memorable character, because the trait, like the conceit of the character is fantastic and really unique. And we haven't really had, you have your hulking henchman in Bond, of course you do. And you have characters like Jaws, for example, where Bond, you know, is just laying into this guy and, like, punching him, and he's just, you know, taking it on the chin and everything. But just that unique quality of that, he's a man who knows he's dying. So he's got, you know, he doesn't really care if he lives or dies type thing, but, you know, he can't feel pain or anything. That's such a cool aspect to the character. And I don't really feel like they mine it all that much. And also the fact he can't feel pain. I swear to God, in that final fight scene in the submarine, when he's getting punched by Bond, he's reacting and going like, ugh, like he's reacting like he's hurt to the punches. And I'm like, well, surely he'd be in utter silence if he couldn't feel anything, or, you know, he'd just be laughing at Bond or something like that. But that's the thing, like, he should be, like, laughing in Bond's face. He should be going, like, crazy, like the Joker or something. That's how I would have done, like, Reynard. I think that's how I would have gone with the character. Obviously, I'm not a director, I'm not a writer or anything like that, but I'm trying to put my finger on why, you know, great actor like Robert Carlyle, and then the character doesn't really do anything for me. And I think it's just that he is quite bland of a character. He's just a bit monotone, a little bit dour, and I don't really think that's to the character's full potential. I think they could have done a lot more. Speaking of the ending fight scene as well in the submarine, there is no impact behind those punches at all. Now, I watched this on the big screen, so I don't think it's like a sound system thing, because the rest of the film was really loud. The sound was actually really pretty good, especially on those helicopters with the saw blades, which we'll get onto that scene in a second, because that's just so weird. But you know how when you watch the original Indiana Jones films, for example, and, like, when Indiana Jones punches people, it sounds like a goddamn whip crack. It's there is impact behind those punches. You know, you watch Rocky 3 or Rocky 4 or something, there's arguably too much power. What is it, like over 2,000 pounds per square inch or whatever it is that Ivan Drago's punching? But my point is, from like a sound standpoint, that there's impact behind the punches, and you don't really get that in the final fight. And it's almost like they forgot to add them in, and it's just, I don't know, the third act's really kind of weak to me with this film. Now I love the third act from last week, Tomorrow Never Dies, and that, again, that was a submarine, but it felt like there was more at stake. It felt like there was more tension. I think the action, the set design and everything was just coming through more with that film. The third act to this one, like when Electra King's out of the picture, I don't really care enough for Reynard, and he's not that intimidating to me as a villain. So I think that kind of takes a dip as well. And also because Electra's out of the picture, we fall back on our other character, Denise Richards, Dr. Christmas Jones. Okay, let's do this. So this is why this film is really frustrating to me, because on the one hand, you've got Electra King, Sophie Marceau, one of the best performances out of any Bond film, one of the best characters in Bond, you know, one of the best female femme fatales, Bond girls, you know, villains, whatever you want to call her, brilliant. And within that same movie, you have Denise Richards. Now, I don't know what the consensus is on Denise Richards. I think most people are pretty negative on her, but I'm sure she has some of her fans. And honestly, obviously going into it, I knew that this was the one with Christmas Jones. I knew this was Denise Richards. I mean, I'd already seen this film before last year, but with these rescreenings and stuff, there's been some Bond films that I've hated in the past and then rewatched, you know, during this year, during these rescreenings, actually come around to them a lot more. Tiffany Case being one of them. I couldn't stand Tiffany Case. Watching Diamonds Are Forever again this year, I didn't mind her. She's not one of my favorites still, but I enjoyed her a lot more than I have done before. She wasn't as irritating. She wasn't as annoying. And I've had that with a few of the Bond girls this time as well, where I'm like, okay, they're not as bad as I thought. You know, they're not great, but they're fine. They're perfectly serviceable. And I was hoping I'd have the same with Denise Richards, but I really don't. And I don't know how she was written, because I actually think the script was handed to, it was handed to one of the writer's wives, I think. And they kind of bolstered the script to improve the female characters. Well, I'm guessing Christmas Jones wasn't in the script at that point, because her character is just absolutely atrocious. She's kind of like your as traditional as they come Bond girls that are just kind of there to look great and not really contribute anything else. And it just feels so not archaic, because I don't necessarily have a problem with that as long as the character's written well and that they have a great personality and that they're acted well. But because Electra King's so strong and the other writing feels so bold and different, and it's an original story, and it's, you know, really trying to say something and delving Electra King, psychologically, that character is taken to places we've never seen before in a Bond villain or a Bond character. Really, really like an interesting, complex web of Stockholm syndrome and revenge and, you know, family tie, all that stuff. Really good stuff. How is Christmas Jones in this film? I don't get it. I don't get how you've got your script and you look at that and go, what's the odd thing out here? And it does feel like an odd one out. Like Denise Richards just sticks out in this film like a sore thumb. Just the character, the writing, the acting, and everything like that. You know, as soon as you're introduced to her, it's just absolutely ridiculous. She's a doctor of was it like nuclear science or something like that? I can't even remember. Like a physicist, essentially. And then she like gets, you know, she takes off like a hazmat suit thing, and she's got like these short shorts on and a crop top, and she looks like a goddamn swimwear model. You know, trout pouted swimwear model. Don't get me wrong, she looks fucking incredible. She looks good, but immediately just like your suspension of disbelief is out the window, because you're like, this, no way is this a doctor. No way. She is just there because, you know, she was hot stuff at the time. She was probably really popular, you know, to get her in a Bond film and everything like that. You know, I get it. And the Bond franchise is no stranger to that beforehand. But I think it sticks out And again, like I don't necessarily have a problem with that if it can be written well. You know, it's functional. You know, they're not my favorite Bond girls in the franchise that are just there like that. It's like Ursula Andress, right? In Doctor No. Granted, a completely different time. That was the 60s, 30 years later with this one. And she was just there to look good. And she did look good. She doesn't really serve much else to the plot. She doesn't really get stuck in any way. She's just there to be rescued. And that's fine. That's fine. It's functional. It's traditional. That's okay. But I think it sticks out more in this film is because the other writing in the film is so strong and so different that when you've got her thrown in, it feels like an odd one out. You know, it just feels like, oh, this feels a little bit basic to... She doesn't fit in. She doesn't really fit in with how the rest of, you know, visually, just how it looks and the way she acts. And Denise Richards isn't a good actress. I mean, I haven't seen her in anything else. In all fairness, I've only ever seen her in this film. But the line delivery and everything, there's the chemistry there with Bond. And Brosnan's trying, but it's just nothing. And it's such a shame because the Brosnan and Marceau stuff, brilliant. Absolutely incredible top tier stuff, top tier Bond stuff. That when that other stuff comes in, it's great. You do get some great one-liners though surrounding her character. You know, Christmas Jones, Christmas comes only once a year. You know, I was wrong about Christmas only coming once a year. Whatever the last line is of the film, and the ending is very traditional Bond again, isn't it? It's your Roger Moore kind of Bonds where you've got Q or you've got M trying to get in contact with Bond and then seeing him on the monitor and then he's you know necking off with a girl and it's just like, oh, that's Bond. It's very classic, it's very traditional in that way in how it ends, but it's just, yeah, it's a shame. It's a real shame. I guess you did need another Bond girl in there because it fits the formula, doesn't it, of always having, you know, 2 or 3 Bond girls in there. You've got the villain, you've got the ally, and then you've got the one who's actually like your main Bond girl. So I get it, but just could they have got a better actress for her or make her a little bit more believable? You needed a character like I forgot the name of the actress and I forgot the name of the character, the one from GoldenEye. Completely forgot her name now at this point, but she's fantastic. You know, she had that sarcasm and that witty back and forth and, you know, domineering personality and everything. And I imagine, you know, when I see her in the role, you know, when she was on computers and, you know, hacking and everything like that, I believed it. She looked like a supermodel as well, but I believed that she could do that as well. And she had that commanding personality, whereas I just don't get that with Denise Richards. Anyway, let's kind of talk about our other Bond girl in this one. Kind of, in a way, a little bit. Maybe not really. Maybe when we get to Skyfall. Judy Dench as M. M gets loads more to do in this film, which is both great for this film because it's completely different and, you know, it gets M actually involved in the plot a little bit more, which hasn't really been done all that much. You know, M's always been a very functional character, which I actually prefer M being a functional character, setting the mission in place, having some, you know, back and forth with Bond, maybe appearing a couple of other times throughout the film as well to just check in with Bond and see how he's doing. It's like, Bond, like, this is out of my hands. You've got 2 days to get to the bottom of this kind of thing. You know, that sort of thing that we come to expect. So I actually do congratulate this film for taking, and Judy Dench is great as well. So as much screen time as we can get with Judy Dench, then all the better. And, you know, she's basically a hostage in this film. She is taken as like a revenge ploy by Electra King because, you know, Judy Dench refused to pay, you know, advised against paying Electra's father for paying the ransom to get her back, and which kept her in captivity for God knows how long. I can't remember how long they said she was in prison for. And she's great, and I do love that this plot involves Em a lot more. I do think, however, they can go off the deep end with that a lot of times, and that's the whole Purvis and Wade thing, because, you know, from this point here on in, they've written, I don't know if they've written all of the Bond film. I think they have, haven't they? Have they written all the other Bond films since this one? I'm pretty sure they have. I know they've done all the Daniel Craig ones. And they like to involve M. They like to involve M a hell of a lot more, especially when we get to Skyfall, which I actually think, you know, works very well for that film. That's like the whole, basically, everything the whole plot revolves around is M. But then when you get to the likes of Spectre, and you have that whole side quest thing and Moneypenny and Q and M, and you've got the guy who plays Moriarty in the BBC Sherlock. it's just terrible, absolutely terrible writing with that stuff. And we take screen time away from Bond and what we should be focusing on, you know. And it's like, why should I concern myself with this really terrible side quest that just feels so, I mean, I don't even know what that was trying to say. Just, you know, surveillance is bad, CCTV is bad, you know. We shouldn't have, people shouldn't have complete control of people with surveillance technology because it's wrong and it's bad and it's mean and it's evil. And the guy who plays Moriarty is just so two-dimensional of a character, and it's just, why are we focusing on M so much with this? But with this film, it actually works, and because we haven't really seen M contribute all that much in a massive respect in terms of the plot in any of the previous Bond films, it feels like a breath of fresh air with this one. It feels like they're doing something a bit different with it, which, as I say, I think after this film they did kind of rehash the same script a bunch of times, because there's loads of common elements that they, you know, but it's all traced back to this one. So that's why I kind of applaud that in many ways for this one. And Robbie Coltrane's back in this one. I absolutely love his character. Let me try and find his name here real quick because I keep forgetting his name. Valentin Zukovsky. He was absolutely wonderful in GoldenEye, and I love that his character came back for this one. And yeah, just gets a real redemption arc to him. You know, cast our minds back to GoldenEye, and there was this kind of uneasy alliance between him and Bond. Bond was the one who gave him the limp, and it was, you know, tensions were high when they first came into contact with each other again. And there's still a little bit of that back and forth, but deep down, you know, the two have, you know, a high level of respect for everyone. And it's in that last moment when Robbie Coltrane, when he dies, it really sucks in this. I always hate, the allies are so great. I love so many of the allies across the Bond franchise, and when they die, it always really gets to me. It's like, was it VJ in Octopussy? Love his character. When he dies, I'm just like, oh, that really sucks. But yeah, that final moment where Robbie Coltrane's shot and he falls to the ground, and he's got that gun in his cane, and he shoots the locking system on the torture device that Bond's in, and they just share that moment right before he dies, where the two just kind of like nod at each other and smile. It's a really cool moment, really good character moment, and yeah, again, like, I appreciate this film for doing that, for showing some of those sides to the characters, and I think it helps as well. If we'd have had a completely different character in this, like a different ally, I don't think that moment would have had as much impact. And the fact that you do bring Robbie Coltrane back, and we do remember back to GoldenEye maybe, and he's a small character, you know, it's a big guy, he's a small character in terms of, you know, the plot and everything, at least in GoldenEye. But I think having that character that we've seen before definitely, you know, it reinforces that moment when he dies in that moment, I think. And then, oh God, what's his sidekick called in this? Is it Goldie? Bullion. Bull, that's it, yeah. Wait, Goldie as Bull. Oh, the name of the actor is Goldie. Oh, okay, that makes a lot of sense now. Okay. Yeah, so the actor's name is Goldie, and he's playing the character of Bullion. Completely forgot about his character. And then as soon as I saw him on screen, I was like, oh, I remember him now, yeah. There's a great one-liner that Bond says to him as well. I think he says, like, you put your money where your mouth is, or something like that in the casino. Great one-liner with that. And I like Goldie's character. I think he's memorable visually. You know, he's very striking in terms of how he looks, and he's just playing for the highest bidder, really, isn't he? Not a lot to say. I love his golden briefcase that he has, and the grills and the chains and everything. He's cool. He's a cool addition to the film. Other things that I'd completely forgotten about from my first viewing into this one were I didn't forget the saw blade helicopters. I think it's very difficult to forget those. But I forgot that they're kind of set up in a really offhanded, quick way at the beginning of the film, probably to try and make them seem less ridiculous than they actually are. And here's where someone comments and says, oh, actually, those saw-bladed helicopters are actually real, and, you know, maybe they are. I don't know. But I can't imagine that these are real things. I think these are just made up for this film. They are set up towards the beginning of the film. They are set up. Bond's driving, and he looks up, and these helicopters are used to sort of, like, you know, trim the edge of the trees and everything, which seems like the most impractical and hazardous way to do that. You've got these like giant triple, quadruple bladed pendulous saw blades just dangling from the bottom of the helicopter. And it almost looks like if you got too much momentum going on it just like swing back up and it saw blade the helicopter. They're absolutely ridiculous, these things. But when I first watched it, I'd completely forgot that they were set up towards the beginning of the film, like in a really quick visual cue kind of thing. I just remembered them randomly showing up at the caviar factory. By the way, the fact that Robbie Coltrane owns a caviar factory is absolutely great. And even better when he falls into like the vat of caviar too. But yeah, I just remembered the helicopter, showing up during that action scene and just like, well, where the fuck did these helicopters come from? But they are actually set up towards the beginning of the film, and I did forget about that. So that was the thing that I noticed, watching it on the big screen. Other than that, there is some genuinely like really good action set pieces in this one. The speedboat chase is fantastic, bolstered by the soundtrack as well, which I'll talk about in a second. David Arnold on fine form once again. The Millennium Dome, showcasing that when it was first a thing, which was really quite cool. I think it been fully built back then in 1999. I can't remember. I remember vaguely growing up, hearing about it and, hearing about it being built. I can't remember, actually. I can't remember if it was fully built or if it was still being constructed or when it was actually built. I can't remember. Love all that stuff. Oh, I wanted to talk about Desmond Llewellyn as Q. His last appearance in a Bond film. Because... and I only found this out fairly recently, actually. I think maybe at the beginning of the year, just how he died. Really tragic. It was like a car accident, wasn't it? I think not long after the premiere of this film. Really, yeah, just really, really shit. And he just seemed like such a lovely guy, great actor and everything. Yeah, he was old. He was an old man, and a car crash and everything like that. It's horrible, it really is. But even though this wasn't intended to be his last performance, and I guess hindsight's something you can kind of put onto a film. You can kind of bring your own baggage into a film and place it onto a scene that might not have been the original intention. But he talks about retiring. You've got John Cleese in there as well as who I mean, I love John Cleese, and John Cleese becomes Q for the next film. And it's actually, I wish we'd have got more John Cleese, because I think he would have been a really, completely different from Desmond Llewellyn. And there is no comparing to Desmond Llewellyn as Q. He is Q. There will never be a Q that's as good as Desmond Llewellyn. But John Cleese is really fun. I love John Cleese, Fawlty Towers and Monty Python and Rat Race and, all those comedies that he's in. He's fantastic. Really great personality. And I think that he would have been really decent. And it's just a shame that you only really get him for a bit in the next film. And that's it. That was his tenure as Q, which I think is a bit of a shame. But, there's talk in this film that, he's retiring and he's grooming someone else to take his place. And he wants to retire and he wants to go fishing again. I love how they bring up the fishing thing again, because we saw him doing that in was it Octopussy? I think we saw him fishing, if I remember rightly. And then the final line, always have an exit strategy, and he just sinks into the floor. It's actually kind of a really fitting ending for the character, isn't it? Even as I say, it wasn't intended to be an ending for the character, but maybe the benefit of hindsight does serve that it's a really good send off for the character. Let's talk music. I might come back to some of the action set pieces in a second. I don't have a whole lot to say on this film, really. The music is phenomenal. Once again, David Arnold to me is the perfect successor to John Barry in terms of the Bond music. He captures that old style feel to it, but it feels modern. There's a lot of 90s elements to the soundtrack in this one. That early 2000s dance pop about to come through. There's a lot of techno remixes of things and everything throughout the soundtrack. It's all very 90s and it's all very great. Let's talk the main theme then. So, The World Is Not Enough, which is so difficult to say without wanting to burst into song and singing it to the rhythm, by the band Garbage. The song certainly isn't garbage. Actually, this is one of my favorite Bond songs. I love the melody. It's very haunting. The lyrics are fantastic. And I love that it's basically an ode to it's basically Electra King singing it, isn't it? The world is not enough. It's from her perspective, and that's not really necessarily a unique thing to the world is not enough, because there's a bunch of other Bond songs as well that are written from the villain's perspective. Surrender, for example, which was the unused Bond song. It was in the end credits from Tomorrow Never Dies, though, which was originally intended to be the main theme of the film. That's written from the villain's perspective. You know, there's a whole bunch of things. Or if it's not from the villain's perspective, it's singing exclusively about the villain, which is commonly what a lot of the Bond songs are. This is wonderful. It's haunting. It's mesmerizing. It perfectly fits the character of Electra. It's dark, and it feeds into that dark history of the character and the deep psychological elements to a character. The one thing I don't like about, and this is something I forgot about, was the disgusting, just the title sequence itself, just a really disgusting color palette on it. It looks like digital vomit on a screen for 3 minutes, which is a shame because the song's really, really good. And I would have liked to have seen some improved visuals on there, but you can tell it was those early 2000s. They wanted to showcase those visual effects. You've got all these, I don't know, there's like oranges and blues and neon greens all kind of mixed together, and it's just like really disgusting to look at on the big screen. Great song, though. There was a few unused Bond songs as well with this one. Apparently, the end credit song was going to be a song called Only Myself to Blame, which was actually written by David Arnold and Don Black, and it was sung by Scott Walker, the melody of which features throughout the film, which is part of Electra's theme, which actually I can't remember Electra's theme off the top of my head, so I'd have to listen to that in the soundtrack. I have listened to that song, Only Myself to Blame. I'm not too keen on it, and I think it would have been a bit weird as an end credit song personally, especially, following Christmas doesn't come once a year or whatever he says. And then going into that song for the end credits, I think that would have been a bit weird. If they'd have ditched Denise Richards' character and they just had an ending where Bond was a bit more haunted and, mourning the death of Electra and what could have been, I think that song would have been a really fitting song to end the film with and kind of, cycle it, but keep it focused on Electra. She gets the first theme, The World Is Not Enough. And then it ends with Only Myself to Blame, which I think would have been a nice cap off to that film. But with what were presented with Denise Richards and the kind of upbeat ending to it, I don't think that would have been right going into that. There was another band, Straw, took a stab at the title song as well, The World Is Not Enough. You can find this on YouTube. It's a decent song. I think it would have worked. I think it would have worked as an end credit song. I think it's very good. There's a load of references in the lyrics, and to like Goldfinger, You Only Live Twice, Live and Let Die. There's a whole bunch of other references in there as well. They mention Kiss Kiss Bang Bang and stuff like that. It wouldn't have worked as the main title song, I don't think, but I could have gone for it as an end credit song if they wanted to keep with that tradition of, having two songs between the films, your intro song and your end credit song. And I'll be seeing, hopefully, fingers crossed, if they show up, I'll be seeing Garbage later on this year performing this very song, The World Is Not Enough. They're doing 007 in concert. Shirley Bassey's meant to be going. They've got Garbage going as well, and I think they've mentioned that a few others might be there as well, but they haven't announced them just yet. So fingers crossed they all make it there okay. Because it'll be wonderful to see this song played live. As I say, it's one of my favorite Bond songs. It's really just a really truly great haunting melody, and I think fits the theme of the film very, very well. So why does this film fall flat to me? Because I did want to kind of end with this, because I don't have a whole lot of other stuff to say about the film. There's some perplexing action sequences in there, as I mentioned, like the helicopter blade sequence is just, it's not one of my favorites. And that bit where they're in the kind of rocket car things hurtling through the pipeline is just absolutely ridiculous to me. And the fact that they're traveling at such a, excuse me, oh no, sorry. The fact that they're traveling at such a high speed, and then Bond's just like, oh yeah, let's jump off. And the two of them just jump and like do this awkward roll in this CGI tunnel. I think it's maybe because it's just so visually impossible, and the effects team are just going 10 to the dozen on that one, and you can tell it's fake and you can tell they're not in there. That action scene just lacks a lot of intensity for me. But then I really like the skiing one. I think that's a really good sort of like throwbacky kind of by the books, old school Bond action sequence. The third act doesn't really do anything for me. It's not really exciting. There's a bit of tension in there where Bond almost drowns, and she's got to hit the button when it turns red, and the water comes pouring in and she can't get to it. So there's a little bit of tension there, but I think it just comes down to Reynard at the end. And once Elektra's out of the picture, just the whole film just kind of deflates. And the whole film's kind of like that a little bit. As I say, the first act, really, really strong. A really strong first act. And then when we get introduced to Reynard and you've got the stuff with Christmas Jones again, and you're like, oh, this is kind of bad now. And Elektra's out of the film for like a good substantial portion of the film. You don't really get much more back and forth with her and Bond at that point because she's on her own where she's talking with them. Actually, the bit where Bond like jumps on those chains and the bomb's about to go off and the flames chasing him and everything, that's exciting. That's cool. That image of like Brosnan jumping on the chains and hurtling across with a bomb blowing up behind him with that soundtrack, it's good stuff. It's excellent Bond stuff. But so there's a few. It's the second act. The second act just really lets this film down for me. And by the time we cycle to the third one, I'm just kind of a bit bored. It doesn't really hold my attention as it does, as GoldenEye does, or certainly Tomorrow Never Dies. I think in terms of a screenwriting standpoint, this is a lot bolder than Tomorrow Never Dies. Tomorrow Never Dies is very by the numbers, very, very traditional. Doesn't take many chances. The villain's very unique, though, and very modern for the times, which I really appreciated. I talked about that last week with Jonathan Pryce. So credit where credit's due. I like that this was an original story. Brosnan's best performance as Bond, as far as I'm concerned, and a genuinely great female character with Elektra King, one of the best in the franchise. But that is peppered with Denise Richards' character, Christmas Jones, Reynard, who I don't have anything against. Robert Carlyle, I think, is a fantastic actor, but this was clearly just the way that he was told to play the character. And I think if he'd have, how he is in Trainspotting, right? As Bigby, and he's just completely deranged, intense, intimidating. He's coming after you. He's just like an absolute force of nature with like nothing left to lose kind of thing. If he'd have brought that same kind of intensity to Reynard's character, then I think there would have been a lot more tension for that final fight. As it is, he's just kind of a bit of a weak character. It's just a shame because I really like the concept of the character. I try to think if there's anything else I can talk about with this one. It's a mixed bag. It's a mixed bag Bond film. It really, really is. Because, as I say, I'm so split down the middle with this. Because did I get a bit bored by this film? Yeah. Is it one of my favorites? Absolutely not. There is some genuinely like really good, against the grain Bond stuff in this film. All the stuff I just mentioned, the M stuff, Bond's performance in this, and seeing more of that darker side, his relationship with Elektra King's backstory, and her concept as a character overall, really good stuff. But then it's when those more archetypal moments come through, they just stick out like a sore thumb, and it feels like there's someone wants to make like a really basic bitch Bond film with some of the stuff in this film, and then someone actually wants to make like a really complex, different, new take on Bond, which is really complex and emotional and just, intriguing from a character standpoint. And they've mashed the two together, and the two are just kind of repelling each other. And my review is somewhere in the middle, in that there is some great action in this film. There's some not so great action in this film. There's some phenomenal character writing in this. There's some absolute dog's breakfast writing for characters. So, but overall, I don't think it gels together. I think it needed to pick one. I wish it had picked the more complex one. And I wish it would just, the tone would have been... It's tonally inconsistent. There we go. That's the term I'm looking for. We've come to the end of it. That's, great soundtrack notwithstanding. It's a frustrating Bond film, this one, for me. Because it's like the credit give. It's like, we were this close. We were this close to greatness. And there are some great things in this film. There are. But overall, it's just a bit middle of the road for me. This is sort of like bog standard average. The two definitely cancel each other out. And I'm smack bang in the middle with this one. It's very watchable. It's very watchable. There's some good character moments in there. But it just doesn't feel as entertaining as GoldenEye or as Tomorrow Never Dies. Those two I'd watch any day of the week over this film. But does this one have the more interesting character writing for some of the characters compared to those other two films? Probably yes. Yes, it does. So, yeah, that's my review. That's my review on The World Is Not Enough. I feel like I've probably missed like a whole, massive chunks of this film now, but I can only talk for so long, and I am coming up to an hour. I've got some other stuff to take care of tonight. So, yeah, I want to say a big thank you to everyone that has tuned in, that has commented along and talked. Nikki says, not reacting to the new Rings of Power trailer today. I haven't had time today, and it's very late for me now. It's half midnight in the AM, and I've still got to get like 2.5 hours of piano practice in tonight. So I'm going to be very tired. So haven't got time tonight to do that. But I did mention earlier at the start of the stream, I'm not going to let a new Rings of Power trailer go unnoticed. That trailer needs to be bought into check. I am judge, jury, and executioner when it comes to the Rings of Power, and I will be for when the TV show comes out. Make no mistake of that. So I will be going live tomorrow night with my reaction to the Rings of Power trailer that came out today. I don't know times yet, so if you're no, cool, you don't have to apologize for being late. You arrived precisely when you meant to. If in case you haven't already, I'm pretty sure you did though, follow me on Twitter at Hobbit Fan Editor, or indeed just subscribe to the channel, bell icons, notifications, all that stuff. I will post what time I am going live on Twitter. It will probably be 10 p.m. or 11 p.m., something like that. I finish work quite late tomorrow. I think I finish 8. I need to get in. I need to get food in me. I need to get ready. I need to get sorted and prepared, get the background sorted and all that kind of stuff. So, yeah, it's probably going to be 10 or 11, but I will post the time on my socials. So look out for that. And let's kick back, relax, and tear the Rings of Power a new one, because I've heard there is some shit in this new trailer. I've heard there's a very questionable song choice as well. So we'll get through it. We'll get through it. This is going to be, you know what I think it's going to be? I think watching the episodes week to week, it's going to be like group therapy, isn't it? It's going to be therapy for all us Tolkien fans. It's going to be like, look, we're stronger together. We're going to get through it. We're going to get through this dark time. Nikki says, not much new. Just drove home, more feminism trash. Oh boy. Well, grab your hip flasks, grab your beverages. We're going to be tearing it a new one tomorrow. It's going to be fun. Who knows? Maybe there'll be some good stuff in there, because Christ almighty, the Rings of Power needs some good stuff. It's dead on arrival. It's absolutely dead on arrival. I think it's going to have a very strong opener for a few weeks, because you're going to have all the normies flocking to it and just praising it like it's the best thing ever, because it's Lord of the Rings, and it won't be Lord of the Rings. It's not Tolkien. It's Tolkien in name only. But honestly, I enjoyed dunking on stuff. Yeah, me too. To a point. I mean, there's been a bunch of Marvel stuff. She-Hulk's out at the moment, which is just utter fucking dross. All of the Marvel, just all of Marvel essentially at the moment is just in absolute dire straits, and I've just lost interest in Marvel completely now. With all their agenda pushing and just their inability to write good characters, and especially when it comes to She-Hulk, the only way that they think that they can make She-Hulk a prominent character is to tear down characters that we already love in order to make themselves seem superior to characters that we already like. There's no need to do that. Marvel's a whole other thing. So just, I've just dropped off the Marvel train now. But I will be reviewing Rings of Power. Would I be watching Rings of Power if I didn't have this channel? Probably not. I would probably boycott it, in all honesty, but I feel like I owe it to you guys. And as you said, it could be fun. It could be fun. If you turn it into a comedy, it makes the pain a little bit easier to swallow, slightly better pill to swallow. Carl says, did you see Showcase are showing all 3 Lord of the Rings films in one day on Monday? No, this is new information to me. I did not know this. Unfortunately, though, I'm at work on Monday. Oh, wait, no, I'm not. It's bank holiday. It's bank holiday Monday. Oh my God, I might go. I might go and see it. I don't know. Can I sacrifice a whole day, though? I have so much to do now. And I've watched them fairly recently. It's a whole day. I don't know. I might do. Thank you for telling me, though. Thank you for telling me, because I wouldn't have known. I haven't checked Showcase in a long time. Hopefully they're the extended editions, though, although I'm going to go out on a limb and assume they're probably the theatrical ones, because they're the ones cinemas tend to favor. There are a lot of good films coming out, actually. Well, a good lot of rescreeners. There's 2 Spielberg films coming out. They're re-releasing 40th anniversary of E.T. and a special 3D screening of Jaws, the original Jaws film. So I'll probably be at Jaws. It might not be at E.T. It's not one of my favorites. It is a classic, and I acknowledge it as a classic, but it's not one of my favorites. But Jaws, I will absolutely, and I'm interested to see what it'll be like in 3D. It's been a while since I've seen a 3D film. Maybe they're bringing it back. Oh God, we've got Avatar 2, haven't we? Christ almighty. Yeah, the 3D is going to make a comeback. You're going to have all of those films converted into 3D to try and make extra money. Like, they think it's a good thing. It's not. Never is. No one cares about 3D. People care about 3D for a bit, and then they don't. Yeah, there you go. Avatar is coming back as well in 4K 3D, IMAX, HD, 4D, everything. You name it. Desolation of Smaug returns to HBO the 25th. Speaking of Desolation of Smaug, if you haven't already done so, shameless plug right now, go check out my Hobbit fan edit. Links to it in the description down below. That is my namesake on YouTube at the moment. I might change it in the future, I don't know. The Hobbit fan edit. So yeah, my edit of the Hobbit trilogy, there and back again. You can find it in there. Go give it a watch. It cuts out a lot of Desolation of Smaug, because there are a lot of questionable things in that film. There's a lot of questionable things in that trilogy, in all honesty. But go and check it out if you haven't already done so. If you're a Tolkien fan, why not? Because I tell you what, we're probably going to look back on those Hobbit films, though, with fond memories after the Rings of Power are done. We'll be like, you know what? The Hobbit trilogy wasn't all that bad after all. We're going to welcome it back with open arms. Not to mention just the Rings of Power as well in terms of TV. I mean, there's House of the Dragon, isn't there, which I haven't been watching. I've heard episode 1 was very good. I think general consensus is that it was good. I don't know have you guys seen House of the Dragon? The reason that I haven't watched it is because, and why I haven't been reviewing it is, well, number 1, because of time. And number 2 is because we know how it ends. Game of Thrones shit the bed in season 7 and 8. Why should I give a fuck? Apparently in this new episode, they talk about the threat from the north, inferring the White Walkers. And then we've got the benefit of hindsight with season 8. It's just like they were nothing. They weren't a threat at all. And then Arya stabs the Night King and they all go down. The whole system goes down, and that was it. So no matter how, and this is what I've said, the House of the Dragon could be the greatest show ever made. It could be absolutely flawless, phenomenal, brilliant cinematography, well written, great characterization, phenomenal costumes, great world building. Could be all of those things. I don't give a shit, because I'm so done with Game of Thrones now. The books are never coming out, and the show ended terribly. This is a prequel to, and it's kind of the same with Star Wars at the moment, in all honesty. Like, don't get me wrong, Mandalorian's very entertaining for what it is, but all roads lead to episodes 7, 8, and 9, which was shit and just ruined all of the fucking characters, and the plot made no sense, and it just absolutely destroyed the previous story of the Star Wars saga. So no matter how good or how enjoyable Mandalorian is, ultimately it's going to lead to a place that's terrible. So I don't know. Prequels are a weird thing. They're really hard to get right, aren't they? Prequel that did get everything right, though, and actually I still need to watch the last 2 episodes, so no spoilers if you've seen it. A prequel that's done right is Better Call Saul, the Breaking Bad prequel on Netflix. Been loving that show. Really late to finishing that one though. Had kind of like an extended hiatus with my new job and music practice and everything else that I have to try and cram in the day. But I've been getting back into watching that, and as I say, I'm 2 episodes away from finishing the final season, and it's been great. It's been fantastic, and that's how you write a prequel. Carl says, before I go, what's your take on Cineworld going bust? Yeah, no, I did hear about this. Yeah. I mean, I don't know how severe it is. I don't know if they're going to be just closing down certain numbers of their chains across the country. I don't know if someone's going to buy them out, hopefully. But yeah, if they're finishing completely, that's devastating. I mean, I always hate to see cinemas go under. Weren't Cineworld, I don't know if it was around lockdown or it could have been just before lockdown. Wasn't there, there was a cinema chain that was going bust, I think, wasn't there? Was it AMC? I might be thinking of AMC cinemas. I don't think they did in the end, though. I don't know. I thought there was one that was UK based that had gone into administration or something like that. Maybe you can remember it. I'm getting older now. I'm getting forgetful with names and stuff. It happens. I tell you what, you hit the age of 29 and just it's like a light switch. Your body just starts shutting down. But yeah, no, that's really. I mean, all the people who work there as well. Heart goes out to them as well, because I mean, getting a job's difficult, keeping one held down, but especially in the current climate as well. Cost of living, the cost of living at the moment is ridiculous, and I'm very lucky. I'm in a very, very fortunate situation, where I don't necessarily have all of the the trials and tribulations that come with all of that stuff. But yeah, I really hope they don't go under. I hope someone manages to buy them out, and it's a lot of people going out of work, and especially in these times, it's tough. It's really, really tough. Nikki says, ever seen Yellowstone? No, I haven't. Let me check that real quick. I think I've seen things advertised about it though. Oh yes, the Kevin Costner one. Oh, I did hear something about this. No, I haven't. No, I haven't seen anything from it. I think I've just seen a couple of adverts about it. Oh Jesus, the 5th season is scheduled to premiere on November 3rd. Okay, I'm well behind. Is it any good? Is it good? Let me know. In all honesty, there are so many with this channel. I wish I'm a one-man army here now. And I have I don't get much free time now. As I say, I'm kind of throwing myself behind my music practice between guitar and piano. I've got my new job now as well. I don't really get much time off. And in my downtime, I tend to want to practice music more than watch stuff. I always feel guilty if I'm sitting down to watch like 6 episodes of a TV show. I'm like, oh shit, that's 6 hours that I could have been doing something else now. It's kind of at that stage now. I guess priorities have changed a little bit. That being said, there are so many TV shows that I would love to catch up with. And I'm getting through them ever so slowly. As I say, I'm 2 episodes away from finishing Better Call Saul. Then I can cross that one off. That's done. I need to get back to Stranger Things. Because I've only watched the first 3 episodes of season 4. I've still got the rest of that to watch. I don't even feel like, is there any point if I do get them watched? Is there any point in reviewing them now at this point? Because I'm so late. Like by the time I get it watched, season 5 will probably be coming out. So I need to watch that, and I can't announce it until tomorrow. But there is another TV show coming out which I'm very much looking forward to, which I will be covering on the channel. I'm not at liberty to say what it is just yet. If you know me, you probably got a good guess as to what it is, but I'm not going to say what it is. I think I can announce what it is tomorrow and when you can expect a review for it. But that's going to be awesome. Yellowstone slaps. Okay, I'll see if I can get around to that. Neo Western as well. I do love me a Western. I'm a big Western fan, so yeah, if it's decent. Kevin Costner's a great actor. So yeah, I might have to check that one out. Being a Montana girl, I might be biased. Maybe, ever so slightly biased, but I'll allow it. Wow, okay. Montana girl. Okay, we're going international with this channel. Love it. Thanks for tuning in. Okay, yeah, I think that might do it for the stream tonight, guys. But as I say, I'll be around tomorrow. If you're not tired of me just yet, if you're not bored of seeing this just yet, I will be back tomorrow talking about the Rings of Power. That'll be a fine ending to the evening, won't it? But although watching the trailer for Rings of Power is going to be a very traumatic experience of me, it'll be great to be surrounded by the most excellent and admirable viewers, and we'll get through it together. As I say, it's group therapy. It's a group therapy session with Rings of Power. That's what it's going to be. Once I know when all of these shows are coming out and when they're screening in the UK and when I actually get time to watch them, I will let you know when I'm going to get a review out for them. And I will review all of this stuff, by the way. Rings of Power and the other TV show I want to review, they're coming. You will get reviews on them, don't worry. And then after Bond, I've got a lot of stuff planned for the channel. I'm really loving these kind of franchise reviews, actually, like the week-to-week stuff. I would like to up the content on the channel, but I realize at the moment my free time's quite lacking. So at the minute, for me, 1 to 2 videos a week works for me, but I might adjust that as of October if things change. And I've got a lot of franchises I want to take on. And this is kind of from like a selfish perspective as well, because they're franchises that I haven't seen all of the films from. And there've been films that have been on my to-watch list for absolutely ages, and I've never got around to them. And I really want to get through them. On top of that, I want to get into directors' filmographies as well, because I love seeing the progression of directors. Last year, I did Peter Jackson's films on the channel that shall now not be named. And that was great fun, because I hadn't watched all of his. I'd only watched Lord of the Rings, King Kong, The Lovely Bones. I'd never watched any of his earlier stuff, so it was great seeing that progression. And there's so many fantastic directors out there that I'd love to, week to week, almost like a film club. Maybe we could all go away, watch that film, come back the next week and talk about it. That could be really fun. So I've got a lot of ideas what I want to do for the channel. Subscribers are coming along nicely, I'll say. Hopefully. Goal is to hit 100. That'll be really nice if we can hit that milestone. That'll be fantastic. But yeah, I'm just going to keep doing what I'm doing. And if you guys like the stuff and you enjoy hearing me prattle on about stuff for just over an hour, then it's all good. That's what it's all about. This is why I love doing this. And I'm always passionate about films and TV. That's never going to change. All that changes is my schedule, I guess, a little bit. But I've got plans, guys. I know at the moment it's kind of just James Bond, and I did James Bond last year, and it might be a bit James Bond focused, but once we've got all these done, I can truly move into new territory then. And as I say, I've got a lot of franchises in mind. I'll put votes out as well, maybe. That could be a fun thing to do on my socials, because I want to review stuff that I want to review, but also you guys are important to me as well, because I don't want to be doing stuff on the channel that you guys don't really care about. It's a two-way thing. It's very much a two-way thing with this thing. Nick says, I'll be there. Hopefully notifications have been weird. YouTube always does what it does, doesn't it? But as I say, it'll probably be later. It'll probably be like 10 p.m., 11 p.m. my kind of time, somewhere around then. So just look out for it, stick around, and yeah, jobs are good and we'll get through it. Anyway, that'll do it for me tonight. Oh, hang on. I need to tease the stuff for next week again. Die Another Day. For more James Bond content next week. That's going to be next Tuesday, the 30th of August. We're going to be at the end of August already. I can't believe how quickly time is flying. It's crazy. That's going to be at 11:30 p.m. British Standard Time. It's Die Another Day. Its reputation precedes it. Be there. Be there. That's all I'm going to say. It's going to be a hoot to talk about Die Another Day. Anyway, guys, really appreciate you all for jumping on and chatting along with me. And yeah, it's all good. This is why I do what I do. Anyway, have a very good night, good evening, good afternoon, good morning, wherever it is you're coming at from over the globe. And yeah, I'll catch you tomorrow. Take care, everyone.